sort of issues of more insight. I wanted to talk about reflexivity, and again, this was also what Mark was talking about earlier. And it is really important for all researchers to reflect critically on, our history, our background, our status, our preconceived ideas and understandings, and how these will influence the study, and we need to keep track of it. We are who we are, and we cannot, we are full of ourselves. We just have to keep track of who we are and how this may be influencing our study. And so in the context of research, reflexivity is really highly valued and increasingly, encouraged. And it usually refers to the researchers' in-depth, self-conscious reflection about the research, the data collection, and the interpretation process. For example, reflecting on relationships and interactions between the researchers with co-researchers or those who are participants in the research, and be aware of power relations, privilege status, So it basically, the reflective researcher asks, who am I in the context of this research? And there is a lot written about reflexivity. I'm not going to go more into it, but it's really an important part of the analysis and your awareness of who you are as a researcher. So just look up and see what people have written about it, and make sure that you are, this kind of a researcher. It's really important. So earlier I said that how your analysis will be influenced by the qualitative approach or tradition you work within. And Creswell has written many books about qualitative research, and he has written books that have been published again and again. I'm referring to a book from 2013. I'm not sure if he has done one more after this or a new edition, but he identifies 5 approaches. He used to call them traditions. Now he calls them approaches of qualitative methodologies. These are methodologies. Methods are the tools you use. These are the methodologies, sort of overall approach to your research. He talks about narrative research. It's like life history research, where you explore the lives of one or more individuals. This, of course, influences how you do your analysis, because then you are looking at important steps, influences, characteristics that are in your people. If they had, how did they get to where they're at? And what are their experiences like? How do they understand who they are and, what they have accomplished? So you look at you have to, so you look at different things than if you're doing phenomenology, which focuses on an understanding of the essence of some kind of experience, becoming a mother, whatever. And they talk about lived experience very much within phenomenology. It's both a philosophical approach and like a tradition of one of the qualitative approaches. So I'm not going, you can look all of these up. And then grounded theory, it is always said that it develops a theory. That is not really what it does. It develops a systematic understanding and conceptualization based on data. Not all of us create theory from our research, but we are trying to do comprehensive understanding of particular phenomena, event, topic. And ethnography focuses on describing and interpreting a cultural group, a social group. You know, it started with Western, people, anthropologists, I was going to say, looking at so-called primitive cultures, but now most of them look at cultural or social groups in our own societies, like neighborhoods or immigrants or sort of, and they are very focused on the field, as they talk about it, which is sort of the setting where things happen. So that creates a different focus in your also in your analysis. And then case study is really developing an in-depth overall description and analysis of a case or multiple cases. This case can also be, of course, a social group or a network, but then you use case studies come more from sociology, ethnography from anthropology, grounded theory more from sociology. So it's also the discipline where these are developed that influence the theoretical approach. But a case study can be a school or a classroom or or a preschool or a course room or whatever. So it can be anything, but you use different approaches and sort of you try to get an overall picture of one or more cases. So this way of identifying qualitative approaches or tradition, many people have done this, and Creswell, he lists how other people have done this in his book. And these are roots in different academic disciplines and have developed in different ways. So grounded theory with this person and that person, or ethnography can be really different. However, all of these traditions use the analysis method of coding that was developed originally in grounded theory. But they focus and interrogate the data from different angles and in different ways. So they all, so I'm not going to talk much about theories, but theories have a lot to do with methodology and especially methodology. So a theoretical perspective, you all have a theoretical perspective that you need to write about, the human rights perspective, feminist approach, feminist theories, whatever you, disability studies perspective. You all have these perspectives. You might need to write about them and be aware of how you're using them in your analysis. So a theoretical perspective, this is very simplified, but it is a set of assumptions about reality that informs the questions we ask and the kinds of answers we arrive at as a result. So, the theoretical perspective, like I mentioned before, can be understood as the lens through which we look. That serves to focus or distort what we see. The feminist lens, disability studies lens, human rights lens, etc. So other people may use different lenses to look at your data and see different things. So I also want to make sure that the methodology and the methods, are, what the difference. The methodology is the main approach that you use. The general strategy, life history or narrative and ethnography, whatever. And so both the theory and the methodology impact which methods you use. So narrative inquiry case, these are the methodology. The methods are the tools and techniques you use to collect the data, like interviews, participant observation, analysis of data, discourse analysis. So it's the tools and technique that you use to analyze the data in order to answer the research questions. So it's important to keep these separate. Also, very, 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 very simplified. The theoretical perspective must be consistent with the methodology you use. And also the philosophical foundations, which I'm not going to go into, except I can mention that phenomenology is a philosophical foundation that many people refer to when they do qualitative research. So it's not only one of the approaches in qualitative research. So, but these are sort of the perspectives, theories, they must be consistent. Your methodology must be consistent with the theories, because the theories sort of look at or reflect the nature of knowledge the theories, looks for or believes. What is the nature of knowledge? So examples, very, very simplified. Essentialism is, then those who are essentialists, they believe that there is already existing knowledge or reality and facts independent of the research and the researcher. And so the role of the researcher is to discover what is already there. And this is what quantitative researchers do. We who do qualitative research, we belong more to the constructivist tradition, where we believe that knowledge and reality is socially constructed through the meaning we attach to people, events, the world. And this is constructed in interaction between people and the context. So the researcher is a part of constructing, and creating this knowledge. So it's a very different understanding of what is knowledge, where does it come from. So it's really helpful for you to read some of the theory books to look at this. Some methodology books address theoretical perspectives behind qualitative research, to different extent, but it's important to be aware of this. So these are the two last slides. So I just want to say that there are incredible amount of approaches and methods to do qualitative data analysis. And these include document analysis, conversation analysis, discourse analysis, hermeneutics, and narrative analysis, thematic analysis. So, there are really different ways that these approaches uses to analyze data. But each approach, for example, discourse analysis, has been developed and understood, defined, and applied in very, very different ways by various researchers. So there is no one sort of tradition within these different ways of analysis. But what I want to leave you with is that the steps in qualitative data analysis applies to all qualitative studies. They use different terms, they have different emphasis, they have a different focus or theoretical approaches, but all start with that you create and formulate initial research question or questions. Then you collect data or you select text to analyze documents. You transcribe your data if needed because you base your analysis on the text. Then you read, you interrogate and challenge the text. So what is in the text? And you code as much as possible initially. When you have started this, many like the hermeneutic interpretive cycle, as it's called, many people go this round and revise the research question and the focus of the data based on this sort of going, through this interpretive, collecting, having a question, collecting data, analyze the data and interpret it, put forward different interpretations, and then go back and revise the research question or the focus, and do it. I mean, it's a circular thing, not a linear thing. So you may need to revise the research questions on your focus, and then you look for regularities, repetitions, or stability or variability, variations in the data, and you put forward ways to understand and interpret, and these. And then you check this validity by looking for negative examples. It's really important. Sometimes when you find an informant or an event that is totally contrary, it really often helps you understand the rest of the data. I don't have time to give you examples, but I have really good examples of this. And then, you look at the participants' understanding, because in qualitative research, we are trying to understand what the world is like and the understandings and the experiences of the participants. So go back to them and see, am I interpreting this correctly? And then the context is really important. Whatever the context is, legal, social, historical. And then, write memos and drafts, and then final paper or chapter or a whole thesis. So this is the way to do it, no matter where you identify yourself. But like, for example, in discourse analysis, people look at the discourse as an act. They talk about speech act. They look to what the speech, the words, the discourse is trying to accomplish. So they look at the text like an actor. And the discourse is like the overall discourse of human rights that sort of creates the discourse you are analyzing. But also your analysis will also be influencing and be a part of the discourse. So there are different ways to understand what you're doing, but you have to do the analysis, line by line, code, write, no way around it. So these are mostly the readings I based my talk on. So that's the last slide. And I really do hope you find this helpful. I'm willing later on to do a similar seminar on writing, if people would like that. This has been analysis, not really on writing. It's just sort of, there is much more to say about writing and how you use your codes, quotes to participate, all different ways of writing and organizing. So.
Thanks so much.
I couldn't hear you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I have some building work happening, so I'm going to go back on mute. But I don't know, do you have any time if anybody has any final questions, or do you need to wrap up?
I have a few more minutes, then I have to go. So if people have questions or comments. Are people still there, or have they left?
Hello, I just have a comment. I really found it useful, and I think the one on writing will be a welcome. Another useful workshop on writing, because I think it will help us a lot. Yeah.
Could you repeat this, John? It was really hard for me to hear what Ed was saying.
No problem. Eddie, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Eddie was saying that it'd be really helpful to have the writing session that you offered separately from that. Maybe we can organise a time that suits. And when the best time to do that for everybody, I suppose they're in the different stages of research and writing and analysis. So Randveig, you can chat with Eleanor separately if you want, and we can certainly arrange that.
Okay, I think that should be sometime in the fall.
Yep, perfect.
All right. So if nobody has a comment or question, it's been a long session, but I really do hope this is helpful. I try to be as practical as possible, like how you do this. All right, guys. So we'll just be in touch. Okay.